Welcome to the Pregnancy Help Podcast. I'm Christine Grimmett. I'm here with Tracy Shellhouse. She's our Vice President of Ministry Services at Heartbeat International, and Beth Deemer, our Director of Affiliate Services here at Heartbeat. And we'll be talking about our upcoming conference and how you can help your team make the most of that week of training. So April 26th through 28th in Louisville, Kentucky, or Louisville, depending on who you talk to. It's a powerful time. It's a fun time. It's an intense time of learning. It's just a lot to take in just a couple of days. You know, I'm looking forward to being there as a Heartbeat staff member and talking to some of you in person. For those of you who are going for the first time, or you're taking a whole team of people and you have questions about what to expect, how to get the most out of it, how do we not just feel like it's a whirlwind of a week, but really take what we've learned and then use that in the center in your day-to-day work. So I've got Tracy and Beth who have insight. They have the experience. We will talk about the virtual conference, which is happening, as well as the in-person conference that week. You can visit heartbeatservices.org. There's a banner right there on the homepage that you can click on to learn more about that. So Tracy, this is your first year as a Heartbeat staff member at conference, although you've been to conference many times before as the CEO of the center that you worked for. And so you've been there many years. From that side, this is going to be a different experience for you. What are you looking forward to? What are some of your favorite parts of conference from past years? Can you tell us about that?
I can. The conference was always one of the biggest things for me in the year. I looked forward to it. I was excited about it. I was the person sitting at conference waiting to hear the announcement for where we were going to be next year, and would even start making plans then as to what that was going to look like. And so for me, this is an exciting experience because I have so appreciated the education and the equipping and the engagement and the relationship building that comes through the Heartbeat Conference and how it has benefited me and the teams that I've led in the past. And at the same time, I'm seeing it from a very different perspective. And I had no doubt that a lot went into making the conference happen and to make it a possibility. But seeing everything from this side has been exciting, but it's also incited some conversations. And so I have found, Beth and I talking about conferences and different things that I've done or that she's done when we were leading centers to make them effective. And, and it's also been fun too, because Beth is one of the people that I would connect with at conference over the years. And so really where we saw each other was conference and special trainings and things like that. And now we have this unique experience to sit and talk about, Beth, this is what I experienced at that event. And this is what that meant for me. And as we were talking, and Beth and I were sort of like digging up some of our leadership things from the past, it just became very evident that these are things that other people might be interested in. So one thing that I'm interested in is, Beth, and I should have asked you ahead of time, how many conferences do you think you've been to or been involved in since you've been in pregnancy help?
It's a great question, Trace. In my ED days, I attended conferences, I know, for 9 out of the 10 years that I was there. Then when I came on board at Heartbeat, I had half of a minute of onboarding toward the other side of conference, and then became, pretty responsible for content and conference planning and that sort of thing. And so since then, that's a good 20 some years ago, I've probably been, somewhere, I guess, in the neighborhood of about 30 conferences on the Heartbeat side, and then also attending other organization conferences in my role. So let's just say it's been a lot of conferences.
Have you gotten tired of them, or do you still get excited about them?
No, I'm with you, Trace. Every year I look forward to conference. It's exciting. It is such a great relational opportunity. Like you mentioned, we would connect over the years at conferences and training events. Just the opportunity to get to see people, be with them face to face, have that experience at conference, which is one of my favorite things of realizing you're not isolated. We feel that way sometimes in our leadership role, and you get there and you see all these people and you realize you are part of something that is so much bigger than you and your own organization. And that's such an inspiring part of conference. No, I look forward to it every year, and I can't wait until next month to go to Louisville.
Me too. And as you're talking about how big it is and the experience, and it's so inspiring, one of the things that I recognized at one point in my leadership is I would go to conference and I would hear all of these great ideas. I would learn about new programs, or maybe there was a new exhibitor that had something that I thought would really benefit our center, whether it was a brochure or a new program. And you sit in all these workshops, and so you leave with notes and everything else. But in the midst of that and the schedule and maybe squeezing some fun in there, it is exciting, but it can also be a little bit overwhelming. And so what I actually identified, as much as I love conference and I was going year after year, and this had nothing to do with the conference experience that I was offered, it was what was I doing with it in that process and when I got back to my center. And so I started recognizing that, and you know how it is, you're out of the office for a week and you go back and you would think you would only be 1 week behind, but it really feels more like 2 or 3 and you're trying to get caught up. Many of us, we're buying groceries, trying to get the laundry caught back up that, was accumulated over our conference week away. And I noticed that I wasn't implementing as much as I would have liked. And, so in that's where this conversation really started, where we were talking about, this is something I did or this is something that you did. And so we both have done a few different things and some unique things. And one of the things I identified for me, and I started for me, and then I was like, oh, this is beneficial for my entire staff, is I would go to conference with the intent of identifying 3 things that would be beneficial for me to enact at my center. And to write those down and to be able to take them back, debrief, and figure out how to create a plan for making it possible to take those great things that I learned and continue to move forward in pregnancy health. And that would look different on different years, but in time, I would also encourage my staff that would go with me to do this. And one of the things I would say is consider what you can do when you get home. What can we learn at conference that within the next couple of weeks we can get home and put into action? And I know one for me that was very beneficial was me actually taking time to do time assessments for what did my day look like, because we know in pregnancy health, there are a lot of urgent things that need to be responded to. There are a lot of loud alarms going off and all those kinds of things. And sometimes we get to the end of the week and we've worked really hard, but we're not quite sure what all we did, because it's like sort of falling out of the raft into the rapids and you're just getting like carried away in the whitewater. And so I started doing time assessments, and it changed my productivity. It changed my focus. It was very powerful. So I went back and put that into effect immediately. And then I would encourage people to look at something that we can do within the next 6 months. That might mean you need to go do some training so that you can come back and train the rest of us. And what can we do within a year? And when I went into it that way at conference and looking at all of the opportunities, it sort of helped me triage them and find what I felt would be of the most benefit, and to go back and make sure that the time and money that I invested in the conference produced a great return. And so, in that, Beth, as you went to conference, how did you make sure that your crew and those that you went with, sort of locked that in and made it useful?
Yeah, it's a great question, Tracy. And I love the idea of your intentionality about conference as an executive director with your team and thinking about it ahead of time. I think that's one of the things we really wanted to communicate here today, is just the idea of, I know it's hard to get out of the center. It's hard to leave family and responsibilities. So you're working on all of that. And it's very understandable that you don't take time to kind of think through, where are we going? What are we doing? What does that need to look like? So the intentionality on the front to do that I think one of the most practical things that we would do is sit down with the schedule and look at what was being offered and who's going to go to what, and sort of divvying things up when you're working with a team. Now, if you go to conference by yourself, it's the same exercise, but you're trying to get the most bang for your buck as one person. But just, again, having that intentionality and the forethought of what sessions do I want to go to, what's being offered, how do I plan out my day, I think is another great advantage to just thinking it through in the beginning. I think after the fact is as important. Probably it's what I would refer to as, let's have the meeting after the meeting, right? The debrief. And you come back, you're tired, you're exhausted, you've used a lot of words in that week. And so you give yourself a little bit of time to disengage and recharge, but then let's pretty quickly have a debrief and talk about what we learned and combine our, what we gained at conference together in order to start making those kind of plans. And I love what can we do now? What can we do in 6 months? What can we do in a year? Because again, you really want to guard yourself from being totally overwhelmed and doing nothing. So I like that plan.
Absolutely. And, sometimes it's coming back and debriefing on the workshops or a keynote. Maybe you identified someone that you would love to have come speak at an event. It also can be just the experience itself. One of the things that I recognized after a couple of years is the Heartbeat Conference was very closely scheduled to the same time I would do my spring banquet. Mm-hmm. And we were at a couple of conferences, and my development director was answering emails and, having to respond to donors. And all of a sudden, hey, we're going to bless you with this table. And then we're finding new people to get in the table. And we recognized it made it much more difficult to get everything out of conference. And so in that debriefing, when we came back and we talked about everything, what was great, what was awesome, what would we like to be different, we realized that the scheduling of the banquet and our banquet, along with the timing of the Heartbeat Conference, was important. And we actually moved our banquet by about 6 weeks to give ourselves enough time. And so depending on when conference would be, is we would either go before the Heartbeat Conference, or we give ourselves some times afterwards. And that might not seem like a big thing, but it allowed us to really pay attention and invest in both and do them both well, which was really exciting. So now, Beth, something that you mentioned that you encourage executive directors to do when they go to conference was talking about reporting and coming back. And I thought that was a great idea. So share that with us.
Yeah, it's really, Tracy, the idea, and this came about in a very organic conversation that I had with some folks that were actually at conference and at some of our special trainings. This has come up as well. It's the idea that your organization and the leadership of your organization, which is, the board of directors, makes a pretty substantial financial investment to send you to conference, you alone or you and your team. And so because of that, there should be some expectation of reporting back. How did that profit our organization? How did it profit you as a leader and your team? And so thinking in terms of ROI, return on their investment, what do you take back and report to them? Thank you so much for sending me. Here's what I learned, and here are the key concepts, and here's my action plans of the now 6 months and a year. The other reason that this really can be beneficial to do this is because, if you hear something at conference that you recognize as, that's not one of the greatest strengths of our organization, or it's not one of the greatest strengths of perhaps your own leadership, this is a place where in the reporting back, you can start to plant the seed of some course correction. Like, I didn't realize that most centers are doing this and we're doing this. And I think that's one of the things that a board of directors should have an expectation of as they send their staff off to conference. And so just this return on investment report, So the debriefing really aids that. It's the idea, let's have the debrief, let's think in this direction, let's talk about and put together a report that we can present.
That is awesome. So along as we're having this conversation, Beth and I also wanted to just share like some fun things or pointers. Sort of if you take care of the little things, the big things end up taking care of themselves. And so, some of the opportunities that we have, some of the best opportunities we have is to make connections and make friends when we are at conference. I know the first national conference I went to was so eye-opening. To me. I had been in the pregnancy help movement for 3 years, and I knew the people at our banquet and at our walk. I knew the people in my center. I was a client services director, and so I was very involved. And I knew a lot of our supporters and churches that supported our mission field where we were. But when I walked into my first conference, I looked around and realized that hundreds and hundreds of people, and most of them only having somewhere between 1 and 4 from each center, that hundreds and hundreds of people had come together and we were all doing the same thing. And those connections were so powerful and so important. And while we're there, we've got the opportunity to make a lot of connections, and that takes some intentionality, like having a plan. And so some of the things that I thought about is we would plan out that conference schedule, and everyone on my team, we would know which workshops we're going to. And while we were in those workshops, one of the things that we were trying to do is make connections with other people in the workshop. You might make a great friend that you can go bounce off ideas with later, or find out what they're doing in their community. We would take the time to talk about exhibitors. There are a lot of exhibitors, and it is so exciting, but we would also be intentional. Like, do you want to try to go see every one of them? Or, with the crew we have, are we going to be very intentional to make sure that we get to certain ones, and then we can enjoy the entire exhibit hall? So as far as making connections with potential friends and ministry partners, whether that is an exhibitor that offers something that's specific to pregnancy help, what ideas do you suggest to people to be intentional, and what kind of things should they be thinking of beforehand to make sure they're ready to make those connections?
Yeah, really good point. And because the exhibit hall just keeps growing and growing, this becomes harder and harder to do, right? So if you're there by yourself, you can't really share the load with a team. I would suggest, and this was always one of my favorite things to do as a director, being a conference attendee and not a planner, was to get that literature bag that's given out at registration, get on my bed and just go through it all, right? Look at who's there and make a list of things that we're working on or we need resources for, and sort of prioritize, where do I want to go first? Because you're maybe not going to get to the entire exhibit hall. So that would be an idea. Splitting it up among your team is also a really good idea, and then being able to compare notes. And, we talked about even the practicality with making connections, Tracy, of taking your business cards. This works in the exhibit hall as well. Being able to say to a vendor, I'm really interested in what you have to offer. I only have so much time. Here's my card. Can you contact me after the conference, which they are so willing to do. So that's another practical tip for how to make the most of the exhibit hall.
Yeah, that is great. And then even making most of just connections, we have the opportunity to meet people from, as I said, all over, not just our nation, but all over the world. And, what we do is all about relationship. We know that the best answer and alternative to offer to someone when they're considering abortion is the support of another person. And that alone often shores people up to where they know that they can make the choice to choose life. in that, this is a great opportunity to meet with people, to maybe go grab, if you meet someone at a workshop and you make a good connection, go, hey, would y'all like to meet for coffee in the morning? Or you're going to have that free evening. There are international partners that come in that we have the opportunity to meet with. One thing that's a little uncomfortable, and I'm not going to say I was always the best at doing this, but it's really great, is for your team that you're there with, when it comes time for the meals, to choose to intentionally not sit together, to go sit with someone else.
Yep, that's a biggie.
So, Ken, over the years, I would imagine you have made a lot of very important friendships and relationships just from doing those kinds of things.
Yeah, for sure. And I've seen it happen with those attending the conference as well. So, yeah, again, that's one of the exciting things about conference. All of those relationships you've developed, sometimes it's your one time a year to see those people. And so being intentional to say, let's have coffee, or let's sit down, or, meet me for lunch and we'll sit at the same table, and moving around and not just staying sort of insular with your own team, I think is a huge, huge benefit of conference. I can think right now off the top of my head about a couple of directors who I watched do that, who have become really lifelong friends. So not from the same part of the country, but they've become really, really good friends, to the point of husbands are now friends and they do vacations together. And, there's opportunity to develop those kind of relationships within our network because we are like-minded. And because I think this is really an important part of this, because it's so great and it so aligns with how we are created to be known by another person who really is known in the same way, right? So you get me and I get you because we do the same thing and we have the same passion. And so great friendships, deep friendships can be made, but you have to put the effort out to make that happen, right? So not staying insular, not sitting with your same clan, your posse the whole time, but really spreading out and being friendly and outgoing in order to make that happen.
You do. And, and what's wonderful is while we're all coming together and we are having all of these great experiences, we have the excitement of the things we're learning. We have excitement over the things that we're hoping to implement when we get back home. But as I mentioned when we first started out, it can also be a little bit overwhelming. There's a lot going on. You still have a home life. You have an office that is still open back at home. And one of the things that I think is very important to me about the conference is it was a time to reignite. It was a time to recenter. And, I was always passionate about what we make possible in pregnancy help, but being passionate about my role and what I was doing in it. And one of the things that I didn't take advantage of for many years, and it was because I was like, I'm tired, I'm busy, or, we've got that free afternoon and we're going to go and do some kind of tour or something, that a few years ago, I was at a point that I was tired and I needed refreshment. And I was really asking the Lord, show me, where I am and where you're calling me to be. And I took advantage of the individual prayer time. And oh my goodness, I tell everyone, do it, do it, do it. I don't care what you have to slide off your plate or your agenda. I don't care. It is, to me, it is one of the greatest blessings that I have ever gotten out of conference. And that's saying a lot because there are so many blessings and connections. But Beth, I know that the particular type of prayer and how intentional this prayer time is, because I think maybe people are thinking you're just in a room and it's just like, a group prayer or something like that, or someone's just, blessing you. Tell us a little bit about what this prayer, the intent of the individual prayer is for our participants that are coming in.
Yeah, I would love to, because this is something that I am very, very passionate about and is very near and dear to my heart, just because I've seen what you're describing. with many, many people over many, many years. And I think it's been a significant, real move of God within the pregnancy help community because of, again, the intentionality of devoting time to prayer ministry at conference. Prayer ministry at conference was started, Tracy, because there was a real calling. That's really what it was. That's what I have to call it, of bringing our focus back to Christ-centered ministries and realizing that though the mission that we're called to is so important, so significant, and so close to God's heart, it's not fully who we are, right? We are first His children. We are first those in relationship with Him. And then we get a calling and a mission to do the work. And so this prayer ministry really is a time during conference to receive instead of give. In our day-to-day and in our leadership, there's so much that we are called to give. But this prayer ministry focuses on receiving. And it's personal prayer ministry done through listening prayer. And those who are really sort of well-trained and well-grounded in the scripture to know how to really just listen to God's heart for that individual and speak it in human words to them. And like you described, I have seen so many people within prayer ministry at conference be blessed beyond imagination. And I love that you're able to give testimony to that and encourage people to do it, because beyond a shadow of a doubt, I know it can be a real highlight of your conference. So I'm so thankful to Heartbeat that they've kept that a priority for many, many years, that it's offered at every conference. It will be on Thursday afternoon, and I couldn't agree more. Everybody should go to prayer ministry and get there quick, because there's only so many spots, right? So if you want to do it, be intentional to register as quickly as you can.
Absolutely. You do want to register quickly and be able to participate in that. As Beth was referencing, that I can testify to how amazing and important it is. I can honestly say that my path over the last couple of years, and even where I am now with Heartbeat, it was actually at an individual prayer at the Heartbeat conference that a group of people that were praying for me, spoke to some very specific things that only my dearest, closest prayer partners even knew were a desire of my heart. And I'm telling you, they read my mail. And I walked out knowing, and we know that God loves us, but when things are that specific and He is speaking to us through others, it is an encouragement. And that time helped me to hold on and wait as I was going, Lord, where are you calling me? I feel a new season. What is it going to be? And in the midst of it, there's times that the uncertainty could make you feel trepidation. And yet when the Lord has already spoken over you through someone who's being obedient to pray for you, there's a lot of hope and excitement in that. And so I really, really encourage people to take time on that Thursday afternoon. And something that was suggested actually in that prayer time that I would encourage people to do is I went in and sat down, and one of the people said, you can record this if you want. And I was like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. I have listened to it again and again and again. My husband has heard it. My children have heard it, and it is on my phone. And so, sometimes you want to remember exactly what were those words, exactly what was said to me. And so it's a sweet thing that you can take with you for a long time. But in that's part of the planning. And so we still have time before the conference. And so I encourage people to begin planning now. Make a plan. Plan the time for that individual prayer. Plan a time for your team to get together and do fun things and connect and build. There are events and things that happen on that Thursday afternoon that's free that you can do connected to the conference. But if you want to get out, go ahead and identify restaurants or maybe something that you want to do in town. Have fun, sightsee. I would build in a fun day. We would say one extra day. People gave up a week, and so I would give them one day having fun. But with all the conferences that you've been to and been a part of, Beth, are there any fun experiences that happened during conference time that you wouldn't say were connected to conference, but because you were at conference? Are there some things that are those memories that just still make your heart smile?
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, they're running through my head even as we speak. Just the fun of being in a location and taking that designated time to just do the fun things along with the learning and the spiritual enrichment. Since being at Heartbeat, I think that some of them that come to mind, you mentioned before about our international friends that come. We always have done a fun event with them in front of conference. They come a little bit earlier to get acclimated and get adjusted to time zones and that sort of thing. But I remember the year that we were out in Anaheim and we took them to Disney ahead of the conference. Now, think about this group of international directors, many of whom have never been in the United States, let alone being, in Disney. And that experience is something I will never forget. But even as my own team, we would do that and plan a little bit of fun. I remember one year running into a director that I knew well, and I was coming in the building and she was sort of like sheepishly looking at me. And I said, "You okay?" And she said, "Yeah." She said, "I haven't been in there today," meaning in the conference. And I said, "Oh, are you feeling okay?" And she said, "No, I'm fine. We just planned a little outing. And so we're just getting back." Like she was confessing. And I said, "You don't have to confess. That's totally okay that you went and did that." She said, "We had the best team bonding experience."
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, there's a lot of value in doing that. And it just makes for memories. And it is very bonding as a team. So I'm highly in favor of that as well.
Yeah. And I encourage people to leave room for flexibility, but to go ahead and be thinking ahead of time, because we all have been there. Hey, Beth, where do you want to go to dinner? "Oh, Tracy, I don't know. Where do you want to eat?" And you go back and forth and back and forth. And it is easy, especially if you're in an area that's new to you. You've never been there before. If you aren't familiar with what is accessible around you, to end up just staying in. And sometimes that's fine. Sometimes a good nap and rest is great, but going ahead and thinking about it now and having a plan as to things you might want to do, we really encourage that. And then also where we're talking about the debriefing, like once you're back, the meeting after the meeting. Then when you're coming up on the next conference, there's some planning that is very important to make sure you get the most out of your future conferences. And, there are a lot of things in there like who's going to go next year. If you have a large enough staff, maybe you need to rotate out, and why. Beth, what would you say are some determining factors? What would be things that we need to consider as to why it might be important for one staff member to go this year versus next year?
Yeah, I think there are lots of things that could play into that, because it might be based on sort of expansion that you're doing and new programs and things that are going to be available in training that we really need right now. And so that particular part of our staff would get high priority. Or trying to train and educate everyone in a larger team. It simply might come down to rotation. Like you go this year and then next year somebody else will get to go, and we have to take turns because, we can't fund everybody going every year. Although I will tell you, Tracy, I am so encouraged to be hearing more and more about large teams. I was with our affiliate up in Wisconsin last summer, and I recently had a phone call with her, and she was just bubbling over to tell me that they were bringing like 12 or 15 of their team to conference.
That's awesome.
And I love hearing that. I love donors who make that possible. I love boards who are so on board with that happening. So yeah, I think the big thing is just, again, to think it through, to plan ahead of time, to figure out what works best for your team and what reasoning you have for one person over another. That all contributes to a lot of success with maximizing your conference experience.
And we have something now that offers a great opportunity, because a lot of centers, we do need a home team and we need a go team. And then we may switch those out each year, depending on what workshop tracks are available and who needs to be there. But with the virtual conference, it is absolutely possible for all of not just the paid staff, but your volunteer staff to be involved in conference. And I think that is something that is absolutely amazing. And I know that was something I utilized with my center. I remember in 2020, when we knew for sure that the conference, that we were going to have to do something different. I was so disappointed. And then Heartbeat said, well, we're going to do it virtually. And I'm just a side note, I can't imagine what all y'all had to go through to make that possible.
We could tell you many stories about that, Trace. That's for another time.
I'm glad I didn't have to survive that. I'm glad I came afterwards. But that year, because of the virtual opportunity, I had all of my paid staff and my interns do the virtual conference that year. And it was so empowering, so exciting. Those that might not typically go to a conference got to participate. And I was like, the value of this is so great. And so I think it's important that, if we can take a team of 2 or 3 or 4, but we've got some that are at home holding down the fort, that is a great opportunity to not overlook.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can turn that into a fun experience as well. Watch parties within your center with snacks and,
yes,
opportunities to be together and to, again, debrief together and really make the most of those opportunities. I know, Tracy, you wrote an amazing article that we published today in Pulse about this subject, and I would encourage people to go take a look and see a little bit more in-depth information about maximizing virtual conference.
Yeah. Virtual conference is great. It's funny that sometimes it takes something like a pandemic to make us become extra creative. But, we know that the Lord is working everything together for the good of those that love him and are called according to his purpose. And in that, I can see that out of a very difficult time, some amazing things, he brought them to pass and has just blessed them and anointed them. So as we're sort of wrapping this up, we have a short list of just fun things to remember or things that you want to consider. And so we're just going to sort of throw them out there. Think about these ahead of time, or some of these you might want to pick up once you get on site. But Beth, snacks are important.
Yes, they are.
I feel like we eat at conference all the time. I feel like we've just gotten finished with lunch and we're sitting down again. And sometimes I feel stuffed. And then suddenly, sometimes it's like, ooh, I need something. But, snacks. And if you've got a special diet, like if you need something gluten-free or if you're doing keto or something like that, consider bringing those things along with you. Hard candy. If you're from a different part of the country, you'll often find that the climate can affect things. You might want some hard candy and gum, and of course, can pack it and bring it with you. Or if you have the opportunity, drop off on the way to the hotel and pick up a few things.
Even in the hotel, Tracy, you and I have had the opportunity to be on site in our pre-planning, and there are great gift shops there. There are little kiosks that have this kind of thing that you can pick up on the way. So that those things are available there.
They sure are. And so then also, this is important. What would your suggestions be for dressing for conference?
Italian or ranch? Are you asking me Italian or ranch? No. Dressing. How to dress. Yeah. I think in this environment of being busy and a little bit packing a lot in, it's important to be comfortable, right? So we want to rep the pregnancy health community well. So we want to make sure that, we're not wearing our jammies to conference, but we don't have to necessarily maybe be as dressed up as we would for a day of work. And so comfort is definitely part of it. Layering is a really good idea because I just love every year that we read evaluations after the conference. The first one says it was too hot. The second one says it was too cold, right? So a jacket, a sweater, whatever it's going to take in layers so that you can adjust well to the temperature. Shoes, I can't emphasize enough. At Heartbeat, we've already started talking about and being vocal about, now is the countdown for breaking in shoes 6 weeks out from the conference. Don't break your new shoes in at conference. And so shoes are really, really important. Being who you are, being comfortable, and then taking those things into consideration.
Yes. And then some of the little small things you might want to consider. And I say these because I would see people at conference going around polling people, hey, do you have this? Do you have this? Do you have this? You may want to bring ibuprofen or Tylenol if you suffer from allergies, have a little bit of allergy medicine, maybe some Benadryl in there, or a little cold medicine. Sometimes the flight and the travel, like I said, the new climate can make a little bit of a difference. In the hotel, I always like to have a little bit of cash and some quarters, just in case. A lot of vending machines now will take a card, but not all of them will. And sometimes even if it will take a card, that one won't because it's not cooperating or it just doesn't like your card. So consider those things. And I also encourage people to be intentional about that home team. When you are going through the exhibit hall, there are all kinds of great giveaways and gifts, and there are sometimes giveaways and gifts that you're going to get in your literature bag. There's things there, books. If you're out, even a postcard or a small souvenir. I have always had the opportunity to take back to my home team some sweet gifts from the conference for those that weren't able to go that year, and it just feels like a little bit more of a connection. And so I don't know, do you have any other parting suggestions that would just make the conference just a little sweeter?
Yeah, I think on a totally practical level, just some things to add to what you're saying. We already talked about that there are kiosks, there's little gift shops, there's cafes to be able to pick up those kinds of things in the hotel. Keep in mind, if you're driving, and this is a nice central location this year that a lot of people will be able to drive to, packing water in your car. Water is always so expensive in the hotel. So, water bottles and those sorts of things that you can bring in with you. You mentioned about making a plan for out of the hotel experiences. We do have the Convention and Visitors Bureau that will be on site, that will be able to give some good tips on what's available. Having been there, we know that so many things are walkable. So if you're wondering about that, it's a safe area. There are restaurants that are walkable. You can get out. We're very close to some great things that you might want to just go and have a look at. So that's available to you as well. You mentioned cash and cards, which made me think about there are safes in all of the rooms. And so you can utilize those, not having to carry around your entire wallet or purse. That's something to try to put your mind at ease as well. And taking gifts back, that's always such a kind gesture, and it's fun, and it's a memory of that particular year's experience. And Heartbeat will have some things as well as the other vendors that you can take advantage of. But all in all, it's just, it is our big event of the year. It is a highlight from a training perspective, from a spiritual enrichment perspective, from just a different environment. I mean, sometimes just getting out of your day-to-day and being in a different place can be enriching, it can be encouraging, it can give you different perspectives. So I would just say, do it to the max. Absolutely. Whatever you can do to make it a great experience, it will be worth the investment.
Absolutely. I agree. And so I know that Beth and Christine and I are so looking forward to seeing all of you at conference this year and the years to come. So Christine?
Yeah, it's so fun to hear both of your experiences. We've got the Heartbeat staff side and we have the attendee side. And it's a different experience for both, but there's a lot of similarities. I think the big thing is that we just love to be in person with you as staff. We do a lot of phone calls, emails, things like that, but it is so great to be in person. So that's what I'm really looking forward to. And again, that's April 26th through 28th. There's also the in-depth day that happens beforehand. You can find out all that information at heartbeatservices.org, as well as the virtual conference. We talk about how great it is to be in person, but if you're not able to travel, if it just does not work for you to go in person, that is such a good opportunity for you. So to find out a little bit more, you can actually read about every single workshop read about the keynote speakers, make a plan, and hopefully you'll be able to use a lot of these tips that we've talked about today. Be sure to subscribe, and thanks for listening to this episode of the Pregnancy Help Podcast.